Hey, D&D Talk. So, we've talked about the Master of the Worlds, the Master of Adventure, and how those two roles are kind of creating this very sloppy mess that hopefully you've been following along with, otherwise it just looks like a bunch of lines. But really the idea is that we have an airship adventure in a barren world, and the players can kind of, take their artificers and magic guns into a crazy adventure. So let's say that all of these things are true, right? Now we get to the part where we have players that are running those characters and interacting with each other and asking you for puzzles and problems and things that are, fun to solve. And so, if you run 5e and you look at the player's handbook, there might not necessarily be a whole bunch of stats for airships, and there might not necessarily be really good ways to run, say, three-dimensional combat, so that you could have altitude along with your X and Y axis. And there might not be really good ways to figure out the number of different things that you're going to need for this particular campaign. And that's kind of where being the master of the role comes in. When you're talking about players wanting to act, right? Players wanting to role play their characters and do cool stuff. A lot of that is going to come down to what they feel they can do in the story. If a player asks you if they can, say, use a friend as a weapon, which might happen, you can go about it a few different ways. Obviously, you can just say, okay, they're technically an improvised weapon, and I guess you can do a D4 with them, but they'll probably take a little damage too. Or you could, create a whole system around that, or you could say no. And what you say in that decision point is going to then dictate the next thing that the players are going to try to do, and how they usually will feel like they can go about playing out their characters. Your knowledge of the rules will translate into your ability to being able to turn whatever dumb thing they come up with into a mechanic that they're immediately comfortable with, because it's leaning on the whole of the PHB and the DMG and the Monster Manual and all of the rules that they're familiar with. You're using all of that and creating one thing that works for this story, but also feels good, and also is again relying on the mechanics and the numbers and the curves and the bounded accuracy and all that stuff in here. So being a master of the rules is basically being a good director, so that players can feel like they can do the things they want to do.